ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. So welcome to our Saturday morning talk. We will continue on our topic, why there is evil in this world. We discussed this briefly in our previous talk. We took examples of Christianity, that is the good and Satan. We discussed briefly about Buddhism, that Buddha said that this dukh is inevitable in the world, but it can be overcome. That's why he started his whole process of, pravachans or Buddhist philosophy. And then we also discussed a little bit about Jainism in that context. Now we will move forward to what we call Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism, why evil is part of this universe, why evil exists. So we will take two or three major aspects today to expand on this subject. Now, in Christianity, they say that God is omnipresent, He is omnipotent, and He is omniscient. So, if He is omnipotent, obviously He can do away with all the evil if He wishes to do. So, that was the question we talked about. Now, why evil is inevitable as per Sanatan Dharma, we will discuss that in great length today. First of all, look at the origin of the world. Vishnu Puran as well as some other Shastras give some stories about the origin of the universe, how it originated. Anyway, it is very clear from the Upanishads that Brahma, the most potent, most powerful, and the only force which is responsible for expanding itself into this universe and which is part of every single existence here, is running this universe. If Brahma is running this universe and if he is part of each and every existence, why there should be evil? So the same question arises in Hinduism as well. Now, here Brahma has been defined as ever expanding energy, which keeps expanding. They do not say that it is omnipotent. In Upanishads, the Brahma has been defined in two different ways. One is Satchitanand, Sat, Chit, and Anand. There is no reference to omnipotent, but there is a reference to Sat, that it is ever present. It is never depreciating. It's all the time in the same state. And Chit, that is the consciousness. And Anand, that is the bliss. So this is the definition in Upanishads. There's another definition which is defined as Satyam Anantam Anandam. That is truth, Anant is infinite, and Ananda again the same thing. So primarily these three aspects are covered in Hindu philosophy while defining the Almighty, while defining the supreme power. Now, we talk about Trinity, how the Trinity came into existence. So actually the origin of the universe, when everything was, completely dark and devastated, at that time when the first thought of the universe came, that was the time when the three forces were created. The first force is the force of creation, that is Brahma, who would create this universe. Then there is a force which is maintained, that is Vishnu, which will look after the universe and run it in a systematic way. And then the third force which will destroy it. So the three forces were considered essential for the very existence of the universe. The universe cannot be conceived without the three forces. And these three forces are inevitable part of the universe, where the creation is one part and destruction is another part, and in the middle is the maintenance. So the destruction is actually included in the creation. There cannot be any creation unless there is a destruction. Let us take an example. If, for example, all the trees which are there on the planet, if they do not die, they stand as it is, there would be no space for the new trees to come up. Obviously, there cannot be creation unless these trees are destroyed. Similarly, if we take the human beings, if the earth is full of human beings, there are billions of human faces all around. If nobody is dying, then how can you have new people coming in? There is no possibility of anybody else coming in. So the creation automatically involves destruction. No creation is possible without destruction. We cannot have, children coming up if there is no decline in the population of the world. If it keeps increasing and it reaches a saturation point, obviously the creation will stop. There would be no more children. That would be possible because they will not be able to survive. So this is what we call the opposites and the balancing forces. The opposite forces are an inevitable requirement of the very existence of this universe. That has to be very clearly understood, and that has been very clearly defined in various Indian scriptures, in the Upanishads, in the Puranas, in Mahabharata, in Bhagavad Gita, everywhere. Therefore, these two opposite forces are part of the existence, the very existence. You cannot imagine beginning and not the end. You cannot imagine birth and not the death. You cannot imagine only the pleasure without the pain. How will you define the pleasure without the pain? How will you define the birth without the death? How will you define the day without the night? So the very definition of the existence will get completely wiped out if we do not have the opposites. So these opposites are an inevitable part of the existence, and that is why we call that in this world there is a duality. The duality arises because of this existence which is there, but it appears duality. It is not really a duality. If you go a little deeper into it, it is our perception that death is bad. It is our perception that the night is bad. It is our perception that, dukh is bad. But this is interlinked. It is a cycle which moves. The cycle will stop if there is no other end. So in order to enable the cycle to move, all these things are automatic. It is the human being which has given this, what you call, definition or perception of a particular situation, which we define as dukh, which we define as death, which we define as unpleasant, which we define as pleasant. This is our own perception. This is not the perception of the nature. This is not the perception of the creator. The creation does not take them into opposites. The creation feels that this is, a continuous process which moves on, keeps moving on and on and on, like a cycle in various parts of this existence. There are various different cycles in different parts of the existence. The cycle of pain and pleasure, the cycle of birth and death, the cycle of day and night, the cycle of rain and heat, the cycle of the various climatic conditions or various seasons which move. And similarly, there are bigger cycles, cycle of galaxies and the cycle of stars, the cycle of planets, the cycle of Earth which revolves and rotates. So everything has a cycle, and these are part of that cycle. So the universe does not see them opposites. We see them as opposites. The problem is with our perception, not with the perception of the law of universe. So this is one thing we have to understand, that they appear to us as opposites. They appear to us as evil and good, but they are not. They are just part of that cycle. Like Tarun had raised a question today, that we should call it not suffering but pain. It is right in certain ways, because the pain is there in existence. We convert it into suffering. If we isolate ourselves, or if we are indifferent to that pain, we will not invite the suffering. The suffering is invited only when we associate with that pain. There are a lot of things happening in this world. There are billions of people who are suffering all around, but we associate with a few of them, and that becomes our suffering. If we associate with all the billions, our sufferings will multiply. But if we do not associate even with those few with whom we are associating, our sufferings will not be there. So the pain is there, or you can say the reality is in existence, but it may not convert into a suffering unless we invite it, unless we associate ourselves with that process. So that is one part of it. So there are two sides in existence. There are two sides. This is inevitable. This is part of the fundamental principle of the nature, how it runs, how it has been created. So duality is inevitable. We have to have. Where there is creation, there would be depreciation and there would be end. So that is how we have to look at it, not as evil. Now, so this is one principle, that in existence, duality is inevitable. Without duality, the existence cannot be defined, it cannot function, it will stop functioning, the cycles of the life will stop. And therefore, this is what you call inherent law of nature. Now, we convert that law into good and evil because of our perception, not because of nature's contribution. Nature does not create it. It is we who create it. We convert that into suffering because we look at certain facts and certain events in a different way, in an unpleasant way, at certain facts and events in a pleasant way. And that is why we create for ourselves sufferings by interpreting certain events as negative and then associating ourselves with those events. So that is one principle that we should understand, why sufferings are inevitable or why evil is inevitable. Sufferings are not actually inevitable, but while evil is inevitable. The second principle, which is even more important, is the law of karma. Now, what is the law of karma? Law of karma is basically the action we do. We have the so-called free will. We discussed this word free will before. So I will not go into greater detail on that today. But we have the freedom to do some action or not to do an action or do it differently. So that freedom has been given to each one of us, how we are going to do things. Now, depending on that action, whatever we do or do not do, because not doing is also an action. For example, if you get a call from somebody You decide not to take that call, that is also an action. You take that call, that is also an action. If you eat food, that is an action. But if you decide not to eat food, that is also an action. So that is a decision. To take rest is an action, but not to take rest is also an action. So that is why in Bhagavad Gita they say that we are continuously in the process of action. All the time we are doing something. We cannot avoid, because not doing is also an action. That has to be understood very carefully. If we decide it that we will not do it, that's also an action. So action, inaction, or no action, all these are part of human life. Actually, life, if we put it together, what is life? From our birth till death, it's the bits and pieces of these actions that make our life. You see, in the childhood, the child cries and he takes his milk and mother looks after, and the thing life moves on, and then we slowly become little older and we go to school. There we do certain activities. Then we play in the class. We have a teacher. Then we grow up. Then we join a job and we start working. Then we get married and we have children. All this is action. All this is happening because we are doing certain actions in life. And without action, life is impossible. That is very clear from various scriptures, uh, which make it very clear that life is action. Action is life. You can say that. So action is inevitable, and action happen in life in variety of ways. Now those actions, like the law of nature, also the law of modern law of Newton, every action has a proportionate reaction, which is also the law of nature. The sun comes out, it gives you the heat. When it goes away, the heat dissipates, it reduces in quantum. And if the sun goes away for several days, the heat will gradually disappear completely. So this is the action has a reaction. If I beat somebody, now one has to understand it in little deeper sense. Certain actions have immediate reaction. If you light a lamp, immediately there would be light in your room. But certain actions may not have immediate action. For example, I slap somebody. That person may slap me immediately. That would be a reaction. But he may not slap me. He might decide to take that revenge at some opportune time later on. He says, no, I will not do it now. Let me take a bigger revenge against this guy at an opportune time. And he does so after several years, for example, in a public gathering. So that is the option he has. So it can have a reaction which matures much later. So that is action reaction need not be immediate and need not be proportionate in that sense. The reaction can come later, it can come immediately, it can come later, and it can come even in the next life and even in the next life. For example, somebody takes poison. If he takes in big quantity, he will die immediately. The reaction is very clear. If he takes very small quantity, he will not die. It will continue. The reaction will happen, but it will not happen immediately. He may die after 10 years. And then there are people who may not die at all. There are stories, in fact, if you look at Chandragupta Maurya, Kautilya used to give him small doses of poison in his food every day, just to make sure that if somebody makes an attempt to poison him, he is not killed. His body becomes resistant to poison. And there is also theory of Viskanya. The young, beautiful girls used to be poisoned slowly in a small quantity, so that they develop a lot of poison in their body. And when they are sent as a spy to an enemy, even their touch can cause death of the spy. If the death of the enemy, if the enemy wants to embrace her or kiss her, that kiss itself can cause his death. So that is what they call them Viskanya. So the poison may not kill at all. It may become as a protection. It may become a weapon for you. It may become a force with you. So it can convert into different ways. So action can have a variety of reactions. It can have reaction immediately. It can have reaction after a few years. It can have reaction in the next life. And it may even work as your protection. So these are different dimensions of law of karma, which we have to understand. Law of karma is not instantaneous. It doesn't appear to be proportionate to us. It can appear in a different way. Ultimately, it happens proportionate, but it may not happen in the same phase. Let's take another example. You have a plant at home. You are watering the plant. You're watering the seed. You put a seed inside. Naturally, the seed should fructify as a plant, but a large number of seeds do not fructify. You put them the water, you give them the air, they do not fructify, they disappear. Some seeds come, they become small plants, but not good enough. You are giving the same quantity of water, fertilizer, and everything to all the plants, but some fructify, some do not fructify, some go up to a level and then they disappear, and then some become full plant and they give you the flowers and the fruits that you desire. So it depends how the reaction happens. Reaction may not happen instantly, may not happen proportionately, may prolong, may happen over a longer period of time. Let me tell you one story which I witnessed when I was in Hungary. There was a president of Hungary. His name was Paul. Last name was Paul. He was actually an Olympic champion of fencing, and he became president of Hungary. I think 2012. 2012, yeah. Smith Paul. That is his name, Smith Paul. And he had written a PhD thesis when he was about 30 years old, when he completed his Olympic, competition, fencing competition, where he was gold medalist. He did his PhD in fencing. So he wrote a thesis, and obviously it took help from somebody from Bulgaria. And that person actually copied that large part of thesis from somebody else's thesis and submitted as his thesis. Smith Paul, I don't know whether deliberately or ignorance wise, he did not look at properly. He submitted the thesis, he was awarded PhD, everything was settled. 40 years later, when he became president, somebody discovered or maybe wanted to denigrate him. So he came out with stating that his thesis was copied from another thesis. He proved it. There was a hearing in the university and he proved it, and it appeared that it was true. The Smith Paul had to resign. His PhD degree was taken back, and this humiliation he had to suffer at that stage. So you see how karma can come back to you in what form, how you don't know. Even you look at the story of Dasrath and Shravan Kumar. Now Dasrath did not intend to kill Shravan Kumar. He was sending a what you call a voice arrow which follows particular voice. And Dasrath thought that it was a lion which was drinking water. And actually the arrow hit Shravan Kumar, and you see how Dasrath had to suffer the consequences of that arrow. So the action can have reaction in a variety of ways. Those ways are not very clear to us. Our intellectual, our mind is not able to comprehend the reaction of those actions instantly. But nothing happens without action. That is for sure. That is one thing. Secondly, There's always a talk about destiny and action, destiny and karma, what we call niyati and karma. ये तो भाग्य में लिखा था, भाग्य एंड कर्म, ये तो होना ही था, ये इसके भाग्य में लिखा था. अभी we got this coronavirus and a lot of people died. Some of them were healthy and young. So the explanation is this was the destiny. This was supposed to have happened. Now, destiny again is not something which is coming out of the Almighty or Almighty decides it. No, Almighty decides nothing. He is absolutely neutral in the entire process of running this universe. So we'll come back to that little later. He is completely neutral in the entire process of running. It is only the consequences of our action which we call destiny, because if those actions which are not resulting into a reaction immediately, they happen sometime later in different forms or may happen in the next life, then we call them destiny. It is not that it comes out of, from nowhere or the Almighty creates it. No, it is also the part of our action which is hidden from us because those reactions did not take place immediately and did not take place to our knowledge. And those reactions get accumulated and they come in the form of destiny at some later stage in life or in the next birth. So there's a balance sheet which keeps developing based on our action on day-to-day basis, and that balance sheet keeps cancelling out each other where the reaction happens. Where reaction does not happen, it keeps enhancing and turns into a full-fledged asset and liability, and that liability has to be repaid at some stage. That is what also our economics tell us. So the destiny is also actually the accumulated reaction of the karmas which we did sometime, but which we did not fructify to our knowledge, and therefore we call them destiny. Now, let us take a few examples in this sense. A person, because these questions were raised to me, that a person who is born, immediately he falls sick, or some people are born crippled, some people are born autistic, some people are born with damaged heart. Why this happened? What is the fault of those guys? Why this evil? This is what we call evil. Why this evil happens? So this is not actually evil. This is actually the reaction of our actions, which we did sometime in the past, which is now resulting into a sort of fruit, which is now fructifying, which is now visible in terms of outcome. But we cannot explain it, we cannot understand it because we cannot correlate the action and reaction. Now you see the cases of the people. Today we find a lot of people. In the corona time, there were people who were doing black marketing of medicines. They were supplying something else in place of oxygen. There were people who were creating, fake medicine like remdesivir. Now those are crimes. Now those crimes will remain unpunished. Obviously, the human civilization has its own way of punishment. We will not be able to punish those crimes properly. And even if we punish, that's a different, stage altogether. This punishment automatically happens in the nature. Now, these people who have done these crimes will have to suffer sometime in this life or the next life. Maybe they are born as crippled babies in the next life because of this crime. And then we ask, what is the fault of this baby? Why it was born crippled? So this is how we look at the evil. We think this is evil, but this is not really evil. This is the action, this is the reaction of our action, which we did at some stage. Because nothing happens accidentally in this universe. Everything is by design, everything is a reaction to a action, to an action. So the question of evil and destiny, which we look in this world, when we see people starving on the street, people committing rapes, people committing murders, people, committing other heinous crimes, our perception is that while this evil persists, why this evil came into being, why the Almighty cannot control it, why he cannot contain it. The question is that Almighty does not do anything. He has given us the free will. He has given us the will. He has given us the freedom to do some act or not to do some act. That is our choice, our personal choice. If we choose to do some action, that action will carry a proportionate reaction. The reaction may happen today, may happen after 10 years, may happen after 50 years, or may happen after 200 years in the next life or the next life. So when we are not able to understand the reaction happening at a later stage in the life, either we call it evil or we call it destiny. And that is how we define this world. That is how we look at the evil. So in the real sense, this evil, what we are calling today, according to the explanation of the theory of karma, which I believe is correct, is not evil, but it is the reaction of the actions these people had done at some stage in their lives back in time. How much back, when, it's not possible for us to determine, and that is why we call it either destiny or evil. And that is why the evil prevails. So this is the second explanation of evil in Hinduism. The first, we said that duality is inevitable in the creation, but the duality is not evil. The death is not evil. The end is not evil. But it is our interpretation that we call it evil. Or we look at in a negative way, look at these things in a negative way. So that is the first explanation, that duality is inevitable, and the unpleasant part of the duality is interpreted by us as evil, and therefore we call that this is evil in the world. The second is the law of karma, which I just explained. That part of the law of karma, which has not taken place immediately and which is not visible to us, which can take place after years, or which can take place after several births, it appears as either destiny or as evil, because we cannot correlate our action with that reaction of the nature. So that is why we call it evil or destiny. So that is the second explanation for why evil exists in the world, if we call it evil. Now there is a third explanation, and there will be the fourth, which we will do in the next, because the fourth is the most profound one, which we will examine in our next session. But the third explanation we should understand now. That is the Maya, concept of Maya, which we discussed in great detail. Now some people believe that this whole existence which we see around us is merely a play of Maya. The Almighty has created this fiction all around us to entice us, to give us what you call enchanting situations in which we remain enchanted. Though it is merely a play for him, but for us it becomes an enchantment. It becomes an entangled part of the life. We remain entangled into this process. We feel this is the real situation. Like a person who is, for example, we are staging Ramayana on the theater. Now, a person who is playing the part of Rama, if he starts believing that he is the real Rama, then he will get entangled into the process. Another person who is playing the same part in another theater, he believes that he is only playing that part for a few hours and then he will be back to his normal self. He may be Subhas or Ram or his name, whatever his name is, more. So he believes that he will be coming back to his normal self after he has played the role on the theater. But the other guy starts believing that he is the real Rama and he starts getting entangled into the process. So that is the what you call enchantment of Maya. When we get into this Maya and we start believing that I am the one who is doing all this, then we get into trouble. And that is what Maya does to us. So this theory explains that this is a play which has been staged by the Almighty in this world. But it is we who get entangled into this process thinking this is the real one. And as a result, we get what we call the pleasure and sufferings both because of this entanglement. We discussed the various pillars of Maya. The four important pillars of Maya we talked about. The first pillar of Maya is the greed, the accumulation. I want to have more wealth and more power, and it comes from the greed, process of greed. But then the wealth, then the prestige, then the power, and then the physical power. I want to get more and more and more and more. That entanglement into this world, into the what you call pillars of Maya, creates sufferings for us. And then we look at that suffering as evil. A person who is, for example, I these days get some mails that my child is suffering. Please donate money to me so that I can, take him or her to the hospital and get treatment, proper treatment for the child. Now, these kind of sufferings for the parents, for the society, this is happening because our entanglement into Maya, we remain completely mesmerized with this world, and that mesmerization creates an attachment, and that attachment brings the sufferings. So that is another explanation which has been given to explain this concept of evil in the world, because these sufferings ultimately are defined as evil, because the evil is the one which gives you the sufferings. So this is how these are three explanations we discussed today: the duality, the law of karma, and the Maya. We have discussed Maya in great detail in the past, so I don't want to go into greater detail, but fundamentally it is as explained in the scriptures. Fundamentally it is the play staged by the Almighty in this world, while we remain entangled thinking that this is the real thing and I am the doer, I am the one who is suffering, I am the one who is doing, and in the process we get this feeling that I am suffering. So this is how the explanation has been given. There is a very most profound explanation which we will discuss in our next talk, and that is the base of all these explanations, that goes as the foundation of all these explanations, but we will keep it for the next talk. Now, just to go back to the origin of this evil part, The three things should be very clear to us. Firstly, this has been defined as evil by us. It is we who call it evil because of the sufferings either we see outside or we pass through ourselves under these sufferings. But otherwise, it is the process of nature which keeps moving from one step to the another in its complete cycle. That complete cycle, for example, we have the sun cycle. We can see the sun. It rises in the morning when it gives very, you know, very light, reddish light. When you see it in the mountain, the sun rising, you see the very picturesque reddish, light coming out with some rays coming out slowly, slowly increasing and gives a beautiful view. And when slowly the sun moves and it comes into the midday, it becomes very hot and you feel it is, devastating. Now I'm suffering because of this heat. And then slowly, slowly it goes down, it changes its phases. And then in the evening time it becomes cool, calm, the air is pleasant and you again feel it's beautiful. And then again in the night it disappears, you feel the sun has gone, the life has disappeared. So you see, this is the phases of the sun. The sun just moves around, it does nothing, it just doing its own circle. And in that circle we are interpreting this is beautiful movement, this is torturous movement, this is very nice scene, this is a very unpleasant situation. This is our interpretation. This is not the nature's interpretation. The life moves in the nature. Life has its own cycle. Each one of us has our own cycle based on our karma. We have created that cycle. Now, in that cycle, some people suffer, some people are happy. Those people who are happy, you feel, oh, they have been blessed by the God. Those people who have been suffering, they say, oh, this is the evil, they are suffering. When we get good things, we don't care. We don't even thank the Almighty. We feel this is what I deserve. If I got selected to a wonderful job, oh, I deserved. I am the most competent person. I did my examination very well, so I got it. And when I fail, then I say, oh, no, no, this is my destiny. I did my best, but it is the world is evil. The selectors were bad. They did not give attention to my capabilities, and therefore I am suffering. So this is how we look at the world. This is how we interpret the world. We interpret the world as per our own perception, as per our own, what you call ideas, which are not exactly the idea of the nature. Nature looks at it as a cycle. We look at it in the good and bad sense. We look at it as pleasant and unpleasant sense. We look at it as day and night. We look at it as dukh and sukh. But nature looks only in the totality a cycle. So that is the real difference between the two. So we have to understand this second principle. And the third principle is that the Almighty remains indifferent in the entire process. He does not play any act in this. He has only set the rules for running this universe. He has set the rule that the sun will rise and set, sun will rise and set, the moon will have phases, the planets will revolve and rotate. He has set all these rules. Eh? He is not doing anything. He is just sitting quiet and relaxing. But this is running, the universe is running on its own. It's a fantastic, what you call, the most magnificent machinery, automatic machinery ever created in anywhere. And this is the most automated system that the universe is telling us how it runs. Look at the simple thing like water cycle, for example. Now this is heat. In my part, it is heat. In some parts, it may be rainy, but it is heat. The water is lifted by the sun rays up in the sky. It becomes cloud. The air comes. The clouds keep moving here and there. And then at a particular temperature, the condensation takes place and it starts raining. Rains happen. In some place it snows. In the mountains, where it snows, the snow is stage, and then it melts slowly when the heat comes. In some places it is rain. It comes straight as flood. In some places it comes as river. In some places it goes and fills a big lake. So these are different facets. This is just the cycle which is going on. While we call it flood and we call it a very beautiful river and we call it a beautiful lake, or we can call it a beautiful mountain top, but at the same time it is the same process which has happened taken place. So the definition is ours. The Almighty has just set the rules. Okay? So three things: that the duality is inevitable because this is the very nature of the creation. But it is we who interpret as duality, not the Almighty. For Almighty or for the nature, whatever name you give, it's merely a process. It's merely the law which keeps moving from one stage to another. And we are the one who are interpreting it as evil and good in the process. As I gave you the example of the sun or the rain, some places we interpret it as good, some places bad. We call it evil or we call it good, whatever it may be. Somewhere we suffer, somewhere we enjoy. So all this process, the Almighty is neutral. And why it is new, why is neutral and why it runs, that we will discuss in our next talk in great detail. And that would clarify the whole concept why this evil exists in the world, if we call it evil as I mentioned, or it is merely a process which passing from one stage to another in the natural law of making this universe run. So this is what we have to understand. I think I will conclude here today, and we will have one more talk on this issue where we will understand the fundamentals why this law have been made and how they run and why the Almighty is completely inactive in the entire process. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, you are most welcome.